It was cold. Not just cold, but I wish I had on a heavier coat sort of cold. Some fucking lunatic dragged me out of a nice warm bed at 4 in the morning at the end of goddamn November in the motherfucking Catskills sort of cold. Shadrach stomped his feet, trying to get some life back into his toes. The stars stood out in a stark contrast against the matte black sky. His father was in the cab of a borrowed picker, trying to coax the hydrogen cell to life. The method he chose seemed to involve a lot of swearing, as well as carrying out a running narrative on what an unlucky man he was, adding its salient points that the added burden of an idiot son was only further proof of a cruel universe set against hard-working men. Shadrach wore a look of complete non-comprehension. It was essentially his null state. When his father's attention turned back to him, he again became the focus of the aforementioned narrative. His uncomprehending appearance gave the narrator a minimum amount of material to work with. "Hey, numbnuts, yeah you, Shifty. Any chance you give me a hand here?" Not being a cell tech, or mechanic, or even, for that matter, the least bit interested, he doubted it, but shuffled over to peer in the access. Yep, there was a cell in there. His father looked at him with an expression he usually saved for questionable dairy products. "You really are useless, aren't you? What are you going to do? Who the hell is going to hire you?" Shadrach didn't care, as long as it got him away from here. In fact, he was willing to go as far away as he could get without actually winding up on his way back. Shadrach's father was a small, intense man with close-cropped dark hair. He always seemed on the verge of nervous movement, even when standing still. Notoriously bad in checkout lines, he often left the item he intended to purchase because the line wasn't moving quickly enough. All in all, a barrel of laughs. Shadrach was a rough copy of his father. At 15, he was a little taller and broader through the shoulders, but he carried the same dark intensity. He was looking at his feet when he noticed an open coupling underneath the picker's frame. Bending down, he snapped the two connections together. "Now try it." His father sneered as he reached inside the cab and hit the power tab. The telltales flickered to life as the cell came online. "Well," said his father, "even a stop clock is right twice a day." Shadrach stared back with bovine indifference. Climbing into the picker, his father put it in drive and rumbled toward the pile of alloy transmission pylons. The power company had pulled them down to make room for a microwave transmitter they were building. One of his father's friends, a welder for the power company, had called him and said he could have them if they were gone by morning. Shadrach could not imagine what he would use them for, but if something was free, his old man was all over it. Case in point, all the blankets on the beds at their home had scorch marks on them. During a hospital fire, firefighters had thrown them out the windows. To his father, they were like manna from heaven. Crawling forward, the picker moved in articulated jerks as the hydraulics sluggishly came to life in the November cold. Moving the boom over the heaps of pylons, his father lowered the jaw. The machine lifted a mass of pylons like a child grasping a handful of crayons. Lifting, then swinging around, the picker placed them on its rear payload area. As each new level was reached, Shadrach pushed a button activating the tethers which locked it down. This process went on for about 15 minutes. The old picker wheezed and clunked as his father loaded the last of the pylons. When the final bunch was in place, Shadrach pushed the tether activation button. The tether would connect but not lock due to the overload. His father, in no small state of agitation, made repeating stabbing motions with his thumb, indicating Shadrach should get the tether locked. The boy held the button down hard. The servos whined and released a sharp, acrid smell into the cold air. Shadrach heard the clunk as the tether locked. He turned and smiled at his father. His father shrugged, unimpressed. Shadrach removed his gloves and put them in his front pocket. He was looking forward to climbing into the warmth of the cab and heading home. Then a snap rang out like a gunshot. The tether broke free and recoiled, rubber band-like, slashing downward. The thin edge slicing down caught Shadrach above his left eye, laying open a 5-centimeter gash. Falling back, Shadrach landed on his ass, stunned, not really knowing what had happened. The blood flowed freely, shocking in its warmth, coating his cheek, moving down in space between his neck and t-shirt. His father stood above him, looking more annoyed than concerned. "Come on, numbnuts, we're going to have to get that glued. Jesus, you could foul up cooking toast." Shadrach sighed, pressing one of his gloves to his wound as he rose to follow his father. The quick fix was lit with an intensity that Shadrach suspected had an antibacterial quality. The small waiting room was devoid of shadows. The quick was a chain of what are known as boo-boo bodegas. They were cheap and quick, and if you had coverage, they would perform any procedure short of reattaching a limb with varying degrees of success. They were staffed exclusively by med techs who were invariably a Stan. A Stan being an immigrant from Turkestan, Uzbekistan, or, in his father's lexicon, a who the fuck knows where a Stan. Shadrach's father gave the tech the once-over as he came out to examine the gash. He was short and corpulent, with skin that glowed with a sheen that appeared to be the result of some sort of applied cosmetic. Shadrach winced as the tech's cool, capable hands examined the wound. He cleaned it quickly, applied an organic sealant, and closed it with a pistol-shaped instrument of Israeli design. Shadrach could feel his skin tighten and pull towards his ear. "There will most likely be some scarring without surgical intervention," the tech said softly, "but it'll heal quickly and cleanly without infection." The chance of any surgical intervention was unlikely. Shadrach's best hope was that the scar would add some character to his face. The tech policed up his disposable gear quickly and dropped it into a receptacle. He moved behind the counter to bring up the billing. Shadrach's father mumbled, "Nice to see he took time from driving his cab to help us out," as he broke out his chip. Shadrach's father was critical of all ethnic groups except his own, which seemed to be made up exclusively of white, loud, and ignorant malcontents. The transaction complete, they moved outside into the cold dawn. "Well, whatever I could have saved, we lost on that little visit." Shadrach moved his hand over the scar, feeling it throb under the adhesive. "Sorry," he offered. "You sure are."